This video is for section 1-8, multiplying and dividing real numbers. Let's begin by reviewing the distributive axiom. A, B, and C are real numbers, then these two statements are true. A times the sum of B and C is equal to A times B plus A times C. When you learned this in the past, maybe your teacher drew arrows to show what gets multiplied. A times B and then A times C. This next one is the same thing, but the number A is written after the parentheses. But it still means to multiply each thing in the parentheses to that number. We have to review the distributive axiom because it's one of the justifications in the proof of the next theorem. This theorem is the multiplication property of -1. We're not going to look at the proof in the video, but it's on page 27 of your book. If A is any real number, then multiplying A by -1 makes the negative of A. With this theorem, we can create rules for multiplying numbers. Let's assume we know 4 times 3 is 12. We can then figure out -4 times 3, because the -4 is equivalent to -1 times 4. And then we can times by 3. This makes -1 times 12, which is -12. Next, 4 times -3. This is equivalent to 4 times 3 times -1, which equals 12 times -1, which equals -12. Notice how we're using that theorem about -1 within our solution process. Next one, -4 times -3. This is equivalent to -1 times 4 times -1 times 3. Because multiplication is commutative, we can regroup to get -1 times -1 times 4 times 3. This makes +12. I'm going to pause the video for you to try the next two yourself. This answer is 35, and this answer is -30. How can we write in words how to multiply real numbers? Depending who your teachers were in the past, you may have learned different things to help you multiply real numbers, but they really boil down to statements like this. Knowing that a negative times a negative equals a positive answer, and that a negative times a positive equals a negative answer. When multiplying two numbers with the same signs, the answer is positive. When multiplying two numbers with different signs, the answer is negative. Now that we've worked with multiplication, we can define division. If A and B are real numbers and B is not 0, then A divided by B could be written as A over B, and it is equal to A times the reciprocal of B. How do you divide real numbers? That definition is saying you replace the divisor by its reciprocal, then multiply. Let's try some division problems. 14 divided by 2. Hopefully you know that that is 7. According to the definition, however, that's equal to 14 times the reciprocal of 2. Half of 14 is 7. Next example, -28 divided by 7. Maybe you know that's -4. According to the definition, this is equivalent to -28 times the reciprocal of 7. 1/7 of -28 is -4. In the next example, I'm going to put a plus sign in right there. For some reason, it's missing in the video. 12 plus -3 makes 9 divided by 9. And that's 1. With the definition, this is 9 times the reciprocal of 9. 1/9 of 9 is 1. Maybe you're wondering why we need the definition of division with such easy math problems. And the answer is you don't. If you know a fast way to get the answer, use it. But the definition of division is definitely helpful for some dividing problems. Take a look at these examples. 18 divided by 2/3. Now it's not so easy to do mentally. Let's apply the definition. This is equal to 18 times the reciprocal of 2/3, which is 3/2. And now we can do this multiplying problem. 18 times 3 is 54 halves. And 54 divided by 2 is 27. The next one, 24 divided by 1 over a. This is equal to 24 times the reciprocal of 1 over a, which is a, and so the answer is 24a. So the definition of division, where you rewrite a problem as a multiplying problem, gives us a way to do these kind of algebra questions. Next in this lesson, the order of operations is reviewed. Simplify inside the grouping symbols first. If you learned PEMDAS, this is the letter P in PEMDAS, meaning parenthesis. But there are other grouping symbols besides just parentheses. After that, multiply or divide from left to right. You do not always multiply before dividing. You do whatever comes first, left to right. Finally, add or subtract from left to right. Again, this doesn't mean adding comes before subtraction. You do whatever is first, looking left to right. Let's try some examples. There are some parentheses, and in the parentheses, we can figure out what 7 times 2 is. It makes 14. So this problem is equal to 5 times the bracket, 3 plus 14. The other grouping symbol is the bracket. Let's figure out what's in there. This is equal to 5 times, and 3 plus 14 is 17. Finally, 5 times 17 is 85. Now in the next example, there are parentheses, but when you look in the parentheses, there isn't anything to do. These parentheses are only there to help the readability of the negative numbers. So this problem really only has dividing and multiplying. Let's go left to right. 24 divided by 6 is 4. And then everything else is still in the question. Four times -3 is -12. Everything else is still there. -12 times 8 is -96. And -96 divided by -2 is +48. If you like, you can write out work steps as you see here and here. But this is Algebra 2 class, and we want to move beyond having to show written work all the time. So feel free to do these problems in your head if you can. Let's summarize the lesson. We reviewed the distributive property, which led to a theorem involving -1. Using that theorem, we were able to create rules to multiply negative numbers. A negative times a negative is positive, but a negative times a positive is negative. We also discussed division. To divide by a number, you can multiply by its reciprocal. And we reviewed the order of operations to know what to do first in a math expression.